for sure.
Okay.
Okay, so I took a look, so should I put them over here or do you
Yeah,
want me to
that's
use them?
fine.
Okay,
That's fine.
you'll just ask me the questions?
Yeah, just to start off with, can you let us know like what your name is?
Sure. Would you let me look at you or look at the camera or do you care?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, okay. I'm Ann Drake. I can start and say over again and say I'm Ann McIlrath Drake.
Okay. And then what was your address growing up?
1117 South Chester.
Okay.
Is that in Park Ridge?
In Park Ridge
Right.
at the corner of Devon and Chester.
Okay.
What schools did you attend with Hillary?
I attended Lincoln Junior High School with Hillary and Maine East for 3 years with Hillary, and then we were the first graduating class from Maine South our senior year.
Right. And what was your earliest memory of Hillary?
Well, I have a really fun early memory of Hillary that I might be the only one who has this memory. She and I took ballet class together when we started when we were 8. And our mothers were good friends at the Methodist Church, and we're in the same church circle together. So that's how we got together, and it was a couple of my neighbor friends, 2 of them who were 2 years older, and 2 other women I can't remember, and Hillary and me. So I have memories of being at the ballet bar, holding on the ballet bar with her, doing first, second, third, fourth position, etc. And I also have a great memory of one of our dance recitals where we were dressed in what my mother called Scotch plaid, and we had little short plaid pleated skirts, I don't remember the top, and then a sash that went like this with a big pin on it, and then we had hats that were sort of like navy hats that were sort of triangular and went like this. So I remember that. In fact, I remember a little bit about that dance, and I can't imagine that we were any good, but I'm sure our parents loved it.
Yeah. And then any stories of you and Hillary that you can tell us?
Sure. Let's see. I think one of my most outstanding memories is going to Lake Geneva to church camp. In fact, I recently was walking Lake Geneva. You can walk around Lake Geneva today, and I took some photos of the lodge that I remember and sent them to Oma and Hillary, and they responded and said, "Do you remember this?" And it was an interesting memory. And if you go to the Clinton Library, they have a large couple of cases of memorabilia from Hillary, and there is a photo in there of a bunch of us diving off a platform raft into the water, but none of us can figure out who's in that picture. So I'm not sure whether I'm in that picture or not.
Was that a typical hangout spot for the weekends?
Lake Geneva was popular after we got our driver's licenses. But before that, we were going in buses or with cars and our parents to church camp. But church camp was popular. There were many of us that are still very good friends with Hillary today who grew up in the Methodist Church.
Right.
And I have other memories of being a so-called Goldwater girl with Hillary during high school age. And she was the most cause-oriented, focused individual I've ever met, even then. So even though I did some of those things, sort of because the girls were doing them, she did them because she wanted to make a difference. And, she had that in her early on. We all got it from the Methodist Church, but she really, was interested in the welfare of the people when we started doing some of the food drives and some of the things in some of the bad neighborhoods in downtown Chicago.
So that was as Goldwater Girls.
That was 2 different things, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 2 different things. I only remember going to a rally as a Goldwater girl. I remember holding something, but I don't remember much more about it than that.
Did you ever see Martin Luther King with Hillary?
I didn't.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry I missed out on that. But another memory I have, which you would probably be interested in because I think it's unique, is I got engaged in 1968, and a good friend of ours that we're still friends with, Cheryl, had an engagement shower for me. And we were in college then. So I think it was at Christmas time or Thanksgiving. I think it was at Thanksgiving time. People were home for Thanksgiving, and she had it, I can still remember, in her family room in her house. And Hillary was there. There were about 20 young ladies our age that were all friends, and it was great because we didn't see each other much then, and we'd gone off to college in different directions. But somebody had the TV on in the corner. I can still see it in my mind. It was one of the TV that was in a cabinet like this, black and white, of course, and happened to turn on the fact that was the night of the horrible Democratic convention riots. And we were watching it where, the police got in trouble for being brutal and some other bad things happened. And we were watching it, and she left the so-called shower, the wedding shower. She said, I gotta go downtown and do something. She left the shower and got in her car and drove downtown. I don't remember what happened. I don't remember hearing the story. But, even as a young lady of 20, at this case at a party, she was, really focused on helping people and doing the right thing and making things happen.
Do you, when, as
Obviously,
far as
you'll cut and paste this,
yeah,
right?
we'll-
I don't have to worry about
and we're all,
when I don't say anything. Hi.
so the Goldwater, we read that like Paul Carlson, was a high school history teacher, gave her that book, The Conscience of the Conservative. And
Yes.
Do you remember her expressing any political views, like when she was younger? Like she was into the causes in a lot of things.
Yeah, I can't say that I do. I mean, I don't think we knew the difference, frankly. I mean, I know I didn't.
Right.
I can't speak for her. I don't think so. When you got to remember that kids are much more advanced today than they, were then. In fact, I heard a Harvard professor speak once that you're 20% smarter than your children are 20% smarter than you by virtue that they're the next generation, let alone if they get really smart, then they're even smarter. But I think, we knew a little bit about Eisenhower on TV, and, and the Cuban Missile Crisis. I remember that was during high school, and everybody was, all concerned about what that meant. But I think we were just learning that there was politics and political parties and all that kind of thing. At least that's my opinion of me. I don't really know about her. I don't remember her expressing any views. But I know I didn't have Paul Carlson, so I missed out on a lot of that conversation with him that I understand was pretty predominant.
Oh, okay, sure. No, never mind. So you talked about like kind of like what Hillary was like in the church and with Goldwater, but what was she like compared to others, or what about her appearance? When people saw her, like, what did they think of her?
So thinking about, junior high and probably high school too, but I'm looking in my memory right now for junior high school. I remember slumber parties. Slumber parties were, they call them sleepovers, and 4-year-olds get to do them now. We didn't get to do them until we were in the junior high school. But I remember a couple of sleepovers, and she was often part of the group of 10 or so girls that was together for a sleepover, and she was just as silly as anybody else. Right now I can picture her with pajamas on, or I think we wore flannel nightgowns then. I could picture her in a flannel nightgown, and we were doing something silly, probably dancing or playing a game or something like that. But so she was one of us. However, there was a side to her that was very it was beyond one of us, and you can even see it in some of the honors that she won and some of the things that she participated in, including the debate group, which was scary for most of us to think of. Participating in a debate group was whoa. But she was more serious and, again, more cause-oriented, more trying to understand and get to the bottom and philosophical than others. And I was very smart and a very good student, and I didn't goof around more than my share at all, but she was even more so in that way. So when I look back on her growing up, even 25 years ago, she was different in that she was a cut above, in my opinion. She was also the only one of my good friends who ventured outside the Midwest to college. I mean, she went over the Alleghenies, as I describe it to people. The rest of us picked our Big Ten Midwest school. She was the only one of my friends. There were a few others in our class who went east, but she was the only one who ventured out there, which we sort of saw like Columbus in the New World. It was sort of like it was out there on those two coasts for going to college. So, but she was very smart, very articulate, very serious. I mean, I remember she wasn't really into fashion and makeup and all that girly stuff at all. I wasn't much either, a little more than she, but I remember that. Again, always making things happen, and running for office and being part of something that's beyond her. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you knew her ever since, like you said, like you guys did ballet, like 8-year-old. did you ever go to her house and like meet her
Oh,
family?
yeah. Yeah, I went to her house a number of times, and I remember her sunroom. I think she was the only one of my friends that had a sunroom. So what do I remember? I remember it was on the side of the house, and it was, a lot of glass, and it was a traditional brick house. You've all seen pictures of it. I lived on the other side of town. It was in a sort of a new kind of brick house. It was being built new post World War II. And so I lived in a very different kind of a house. We didn't have sunrooms, but to go to her house where she had a sunroom was where we usually gathered or played or talked to people. I remember her mother a lot,
Yeah.
but I don't remember her father. I remember him passing through, between here and there, but I really don't remember him very much, although we had similar fathers, which is sort of interesting. So they were both business people, and they both were entrepreneurial business people, our two fathers. And she was obviously the firstborn, and I was the only. So we got a lot of who we are from our World War II fathers, and that has to do with being assertive and confident and making things happen. I don't remember her. I remember her brothers being around, but I can't tell you any story about them.
Okay. Did you have any classes with her?
Wow, classes with Hillary? I don't think so. I don't think I had any classes in common with Hillary. How could that be? Well, it was a big school. They were all big schools. Yeah, I don't think so. Junior high, I remember what group she was in, and I was in a different group. As far as we were put together in groups, pods or something in junior high. I can't remember any classes with Hillary.
Oh, then did you have clubs that you were in?
Yeah, I remember working on running for office and being in variety show. There was one year of student council. I think I was it was like a substitute student council person. I think I was some kind of student council person, and she was on the student council. I was really big into pom-pom squads, so that took a lot of my time last couple of years. She was debating and running for office. But I do remember campaigns coming back to me. It has something to do with the Beatles. I can remember folding flyers somewhere because there was Beatles music going on. It must have been for student council offices and that kind of thing. But I missed out being in class with her.
Okay. Did you hang out outside of school with her in like a group? Because I know she had a few people in her group. Were you part of that?
I was part of the group. Now, I did come from a different grade school, so I went to Roosevelt, and so they were on the other side of town, and so we didn't come together until junior high. But I was part of a group of 12 or 20. I can't say I was one of her top 3 best friends, because I was more friendly with people that were sort of on my side of town. But yeah, because we were, cause-oriented, making things happen kind of ladies, and so there were a lot of us that hung out together and still do.
And we learned from someone that Boobies was a popular hangout spot.
Yes.
Did you go there too?
I did.
Even there's a pizza place?
Yeah, I remember going to Boobies, and I remember going there for her birthday about 30 years ago. We all went there together and met her there. And yes, I remember Boobies well. And everybody, of course, talks about the famous Boobies bus drink, which I remember. It was sort of like a green milkshake, I think. Yeah, that was a big hangout place. I remember going there. I think we sort of danced. I think you weren't supposed to, but I think I can remember dancing there. I'm sure you weren't supposed to, but I do remember going over there. And I got a car when I was 16, and no one had a car when they were 16. I still have that car. Yeah. It's a 1963 red Cutlass F85 convertible. And so I did a lot of the driving. So I remember her being in the car with me, and lots of people packed in the car. So we would go to A&W Root Beer was another place we went to, which would have been over on River Road, which is gone. But I remember going there too from school. And I remember her being with a group of 6 or whatever we piled into the car. I don't think we had seatbelts. We didn't have seatbelts. Yeah, so we just put a lot of people in that car.
And then you couldn't dance in those places, but were there dance clubs that you guys went to on maybe Friday nights or?
I remember something in what we called Uptown. You still call it Uptown? Mm-hmm. In Uptown in the first year or so, but I don't think it was successful. So, but I remember going to the pool, West Side Pool, and there were dances there.
Pool? Which pool? The Hinckley pool? Or?
Not the Hinckley.
Centennial?
Was more over by Lincoln.
Right by the Park District?
Yeah,
Centennial,
you
yeah.
call it Centennial,
Wow.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was new during our upbringing, we used to ride bikes there when we couldn't
Okay.
drive. But I remember dances there, and Hillary would be there along with many other people, but all of us would be there. For though I can see Prairie Paper streamers right now in my head at what we called West Park. So I do remember that. Well, proms, of course. Yeah, and I think she took Jim Van Choi. Someone else would probably tell you that or he took her to the senior prom. Who did I go to the senior prom with? I think I went with the person I ended up marrying, Lynn Wildblood. So I remember her with many others, but I can't say we would have gotten together first because again, I was best friends with people more that I grew up on my side of town with, but then we would have come together at some point.
This is kind of going back to the academic side. Do you remember any stories about Hillary with her teachers?
Well, I remember that she and Paul Carlson used to take each other on, but she really loved him. I mean, loved him in a good way. Was very in awe of him. And I wasn't in those classes, so I don't know how I missed Paul Carlson, but I did. I don't remember who I had. I can't say I do. Was she, when we got together with Mr. Reese, was she part of that group? Maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure that I can.
With Paul Carlson, did you ever hear about the debate they had where he made Hillary argue the more liberal side and her friend argue the conservative side?
I mean, we've all heard about it. Well, whether it took place, I mean, what took place, we'll never know. But yes, we've all heard about it.
Oh.
Absolutely. Yeah, but I can't remember anything about it at the time.
Okay. That's the first one.
All right. So you said you went to the Methodist Church, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what memories do you have from there with her? Like, Mr.
Well-
Murphy mentioned confirmation or
Oh,
anything
yeah,
like that.
confirmation, the famous confirmation picture. Yes, we're all in that famous confirmation picture, and so many of us are in that picture. Yeah, the Methodist Church was a key component of my growing up in both primary and junior high in particular. And like I said, our mothers were very friendly. In fact, as an aside, one time I was at the White House in the last 20 years when her mother was still alive and my mother was still alive, and I was able to make a cell phone call, from where we were in the White House with Dorothy calling my mother, which was amazing. My mother died in 2002, so it was before then, which I thought was really a wonderful thing. And they were good friends. So the question was activities at...
Yeah, just anything you remember.
Yeah, I do remember that we had some lounges. The church was pretty big, and we had lounges and places where we could go and do homework. I remember doing homework there, and where we could hang out. And they had a big kitchen facility there, and I think I remember cooking, which is, I can't imagine that we were cooking, but we must have been learning how to cook. So, and again, I remember her more in a group than the one-on-one thing with some of the other girls, Patsy and Cheryl and Lois was a Methodist church person. I ran into someone last night at dinner in downtown Chicago who was at the Methodist church. She was a year ahead of us, but we started reminiscing last night about the Methodist church and what she remembers, and we think we haven't seen each other in 30 or 35 years. So so I told her I was doing this interview today, so we were starting to think about that. I can't be any more specific than that. I think I told you what I remember.
Do you remember Pastor Don Jones?
Absolutely. Yeah, Don Jones, of course. I mean, he was so dynamic, and the older senior pastor was, I think, Dr. Gustafson at that time. And I remember him well, too. And yeah, Don Jones was just so charismatic and so spoke to all of us. And I remember really being into understanding the Christian faith and what it was all about at that time in junior high with Hillary and others. And those are some of my best memories are at those retreats in Lake Geneva. I can see him right now setting up in front of a large group, fireplace in the background, and he just really connected with us. And you know, we were all looking for answers and reasons for being and trying to figure out life and what was important and trying to learn how to be separate and away from our parents and all of that. So I think it played a big role. And from what I've read that she's written, you know, it did play a big role for her and had a lot of meaning for her too. So it was very, very important. I also started going to Young Life as a high school student, and I remember her going to that too. So we were really into Young Life at that time, which was a Young Life is still around today, a non-denominational Christian group for high school kids around the world. And it has a staff and a big staff. And I remember going there also. Went to a couple of their camps. Don't remember Hillary at any of those camps. But I do remember mostly swimming pool in the summer and getting together and talking, and then later on after we learned to drive, driving to McDonald's. The McDonald's over on Milwaukee was one that was very popular then. In fact, I got my first speeding ticket that year. First year I drove was on the way to that McDonald's. So, and I think I just mentioned earlier that I had sort of a hot car, so I was often the one picking people up. So I remember being outside Hillary's house a lot.
Waiting.
And of course, those were in the days when some of us were learning to smoke. Can you believe it? So it was great having a convertible, because then our parents couldn't tell we'd been smoking, so we thought. I don't remember Hillary smoking. I don't remember her ever smoking. I don't think she did. So I don't remember that.
What about like growing up after high school, after college? What about memories?
Well, yeah, so sort of lost touch with her during college, and of course everyone knows about the famous speech she gave at commencement, and we were reading about it in Time magazine just like anybody else was, thinking, oh my, Hillary's gone off the edge, and oh my gosh, what's she doing? And I remember her with those big glasses and long hair and no makeup. And then when she went to law school, I mean, we really did lose her. There were a couple of us, including Betsy Eberling, her very best friend, who stayed really close to her then, but I did not. However, we started having class reunions every 5 years, and I always went. And after the first couple, I always had a pre-party. Still do. So I remember her at pre-parties, and I remember meeting Bill for the first time. It was actually at my house in Downers Grove, and it was when he was in between governorships. So he was not working then as governor, and I remember a conversation about that, and I remember him around my dining room table, and we've got photos of that that time, whatever time period that was. So then every 5 years then, I remember the next pre-party actually, which was at my friend Cheryl's house, and I remember my husband saying to me, The Economist has got some articles saying that he just might be our next president. And that was really early on. So and then it really starts pretty intensely from Little Rock on election night, and then pretty intensely for the last 25 years with a group of 12 or so of us that have stayed really close. So election night in whatever year that would be, 92. Election night in 1992 in Little Rock, Arkansas was one of the most incredible experiences I ever had. I mean, I felt like Susie from Kansas. Betsy gave us a call and said, if you can pack your suitcase and be there, to say yes to me, and no husbands can come. We just got spaces for all the rest of you. We'll sleep on floors. We'll do whatever we have to, but we've got spots and tickets for all of you. So I said to my husband, see ya, and went out there and, was just amazed as to how small Little Rock was. I'd never been there before. And I remember all of the TV, antennas on, a whole block of them. And that was a long time ago. There were great T-shirts being sold on the street, which I bought. Let me see if I can remember it. 4 women's names. So Indira, Eleanor, who was the third lady? And then Hillary. I wish I could remember. Indira? Can't think of it right now. But I bought one, and when Bill got into the White House, I had them made for the Committee of 200, which is a women's CEO group that I belong to, and I sent them to all 400 members. I was so excited. I thought that was such a cool T-shirt. And when you look back now and think of what the Secretary of State, all those other kinds of things since then, it was really a precursor to what happened. But that experience there. I mean, I never believed. I mean, I just thought it was a long shot. I mean, I never thought it was possible. Yeah. And then of someone I knew, I always thought presidents came from other places. So I was very, very surprised. But it was just a wonderful experience, and I can still see Bill and Hillary up there in front of the old Capitol. And then getting to go to the family party, I mean, we were there till 3 o'clock in the morning or something. And that was the first time I met Mrs. Clinton. I met Bill's mom and his family. So it was the experience of a lifetime.
Wow. So what would you say is overall your favorite memory of Hillary? Like growing up, adult, like...
Oh, I have so many. I think it's back to being a little girl in the ballet class with the Scotch plaid on, because we were just so young and so innocent, and so proud of ourselves as dancers, which we were probably terrible. I think that's my really childhood memory of the little girl. And then I think then the next most important memory would be at that retreat in Lake Geneva during junior high. Was sitting with her and listening to Reverend Jones. And then you probably fast forward to some of the experiences with the 5-year reunions and with the pre-parties that I would have. Oh, and one time we got inside my red car that I got when I was in high school, and we had, all of us got this great photo of all of us, hanging out around the car, which was really fun. But most of my memories, of course, now are just amazed about all that she's accomplished, and I love reading about her in the paper and agreeing or disagreeing with what's being said. And I just tell people, Hillary's the real deal. I mean, she was real then. She was as authentic as the day is long, and that was part of what set her apart. Cause-oriented, and I've been with her in her Senate office and seen her, at Secretary of State events and at the Clinton Library, and she's just, when you look back, she had all the right raw material, and was amazing that she's taken it as far as she can. And it's just so important that we continue that legacy and get her to be our first woman president.
So when you read things about her and you hear different things, do you still see a little bit of high school Hillary in her, or do you think she's changed a little bit?
It's a great question. Do I see a little bit of high school Hillary in her? Absolutely. I see a lot of high school Hillary in her. I mean, I can look at that face and know it's in that head. So, yeah, I think she is very much. She's more confident and more worldly and more social than she was then. When you have to be first lady and they're all criticizing everything you wear and how your hair looks, she had to learn to play that game. And obviously, as a candidate for any kind of public office, you've got to play that game, and it must be horrible. Oh yes, she's still the same Hillary. We get together with her for lunch, maybe, I think last year there were about 8 of us, 10 of us that had lunch one time, and it was just like always. Oh, and I had a birthday party for her a few years ago, which was really great. And she wrote me a note on the way home, and I knew she was flying somewhere, so it was 3 hours later, so I knew she was in flight. She wrote me a note saying, it was just such a great time to relax, and everybody still is irreverent, or Rick Ricketts is still as irreverent as he was then. So it was great that she could relax and on this birthday party I had for her at my apartment and have some memories of the past. I think she really appreciates it when we get together, and she can just be her. I mean, be the non-public her. But absolutely, she's the same person, only knows the name of every global leader and every political issue. It's just way beyond my imagination today as to how she could be so accomplished.
Are you a part of the Friends for Hillary or with Hillary group?
I'm sure I'm a part of every group. I mean, oh, you mean the actual?
Yeah, where they meet up and.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, there's about 12 of us who are pretty close that see her a fair amount, but I don't know that we call ourselves Friends of Hillary. I mean, other people call various groups Friends of Hillary. I don't know whether that's us or not.
Okay.
But we're definitely close to her and see her. Yeah, absolutely.
When's the last time you saw her?
Last time I saw her was in Des Moines. I went out for the weekend to canvass and called on doors in Des Moines, Iowa, all day, most of the day Saturday and most of the day Sunday, and then saw her at the rally that night. That was the last time I saw her.
When you were campaigning, when people say and you say I'm her friend, or let me tell you why what do you say personally about her that? Kind of like, well, let me explain, like, this is a person I know, you know, what do you say?
I think that's a great question, and I was very lucky because I was teamed up, we went in pairs, and I was teamed up with actually a personal friend of mine from college who lives in Des Moines. So we learned how to say our shtick, and so we would say, we'd knock on the door and say, hi, we're with the Hillary campaign, and we'd like to talk to you for a few minutes. And then I would start out that I'm from Park Ridge, Illinois, and I've known Hillary my whole life, and I can tell you that, you know, she's the real deal. I love telling people that because they wonder about that, you know, that she's a normal person and yet very accomplished and very cause-oriented and very, very smart, and I've seen her for all these years. And then my friend will talk, who was talking, Judy, my friend Judy, was talking about, and the fact that she lives in Iowa and she's an Iowan, which of course I'm not, although I went to school in Iowa. And then they would just ask a lot of questions, and our goal was to try to get them to the caucus. So our goal was to try to answer any questions and get them to go there. And I think we swayed a number of people, and it was very interesting. And then they would ask us questions, and it was as different as the population. You never knew it was going to be behind that door, which was also very interesting because you never knew it was going to be there. And of course, many people didn't answer or weren't home. It was on the weekend. So, but they want to know. You know, is she? They want to know. Really, they want to know if she's real. That's what they want to know. I mean, they want to know what they should believe about what they read in the paper. I mean, I can validate that she's the real deal.
So we've read a lot about how she's very cause-oriented. And thinking back, like, we've heard a couple of stories. Like, do you remember her helping out, or, you know, anybody who had a problem or anything in school, or, you know?
She was very helpful to others. Let me think about that. Yeah, she was. Oh, I can remember a few things about somebody else's boyfriend and her comforting them, and maybe sometime I can remember somebody went home with her, I mean, one of our girlfriends, because of some issue. Her mother was really helpful to all of us. I remember her mother being sort of pro-kids, if you will, and, you know, treated us like adults and equals, and she was always very, very helpful. And I can do remember being in that sunroom with some difficult conversations, but I don't remember who was talking or what it was about.
Okay.
But that was definitely her also.
You know, it's interesting you comment about how, like, her mother was very pro-kid, and Hillary went on to be a pioneer in rights for children. And you know where I'm going with this. Do you think, like, since Hillary's mother treated you guys like adults and that you should be treated with respect, do you think that maybe inspired, you know, obviously, how do you?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And her mother had a difficult childhood, as I'm sure you've all read. And I was part of the group that did that mother interview, which was also exhibited at the Clinton Library, and which was really fun to give us our memories of Mrs. Rodham. But yes, I think so. I think she grew up in a household where people were concerned about other people and where they did something about it. At least her mother. I think her father was busy coming and going from work, like most of our fathers were. We didn't see them. But I'm sure she got that both from her mother and her family and what had happened to her mother growing up, and also from the church. I mean, we were really raised to be helping others. So I'm sure that is built into her, absolutely.
You mentioned that about, like, Don Jones. It was really struck you when you guys did the retreat. What kind of, it's hard to put in words, I guess, but what struck you as really meaningful, like when you took away from that, and maybe, I don't know if Hillary did, like, what was different or that you learned that struck with you, that was new or significant to you at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I can remember the Christian experience, frankly. And I remember sitting with Hillary and a couple others, and I mean, he just made it really real, that you really needed to have a personal relationship, and you really needed to make a personal relationship with God and have it be part of who you were and your world and your life. And to kids in 7th and 8th grade, which is what I remember, I mean, that meant a lot to us and was part of who we were. And I think part of who she is today too.
Right.
And that was, he just helped you put the pieces together and make sense out of that picture for a teen. And I think, well, my mother, I remember, told me that we want you to go to church. We feel it's our responsibility to take you up to a certain grade, and then it's up to you what you believe. But there was no question about how we felt and what that was important. And I'm sure some of those qualities distinguished us a lot from the thousands of 3,000 people or kids that were in our school.
What's the camp that you went to? Was it Wesley Woods, or do you remember?
Wesley Woods. Yeah, Wesley Woods. It's there today. So, yeah, I have a house in Lake Geneva, so I walk around the lake sometimes, so it's still there. Wesley Woods. Red brick building, it's still there too.
Going back to what you said, how you remember her as a group, basically, in a
Yeah.
group setting, do you
Yeah.
think she attracted people because of her qualities? Like, what kind of qualities did make her, like, a leader in your age group? Because not everyone during that age group has the right mindset to lead others.
That is such a good question. The whole question of leadership, and you're absolutely right, and I should have put my finger on that word sooner, but she was definitely a leader. So people were attracted to her, were wanting to be with her, were wanting to get help from her, were wanting to follow her, or wanting to elect her. So there was no question about that when I look back. And in fact, in the early 90s, when the whole, Clinton started being in the front page of every paper, I remember thinking, oh my heavens, this makes such sense. Because I was learning about business leadership at that time, and reading about her and thinking about those years. Absolutely, she was the kind of person that was oriented towards the world and towards a variety of people, and towards other oriented and making things happen for you and helping you and moving out into the world even more than I was, as far as moving beyond myself and into doing something about the world. Absolutely. And it was fun sitting in her Senate office because I thought, well, how is she possibly going to get elected senator in New York? I just thought, talk about an impossible task. I thought, okay. And sitting in her office, talking to her about it, and talking to the issues she was dealing with. And one time I was visiting her and almost said, why don't you jump in the back of the limousine with her, and you can go to the luncheon she's going to. So we did. And talking to her on the way over there and realizing that, oh my heavens, it's one thing to be married to the president and doing all that she did. It's another thing to be off on your own and, building your own national political career. And she did it. And my friends who lived in New York said, who's this person from Arkansas coming here? And they all loved her after she was there a few years, because she's so work-oriented, making things happen-oriented. She can connect the dots. She can figure out, she has empathy for other people that help you understand what needs to be done. And her leadership in making things happen in the Senate was awesome.
So looking back in high school, as far as her cause-oriented, first of all, I think I give you a lot of credit for trying to remember things that
Thank you.
ago. So I have trouble like yesterday.
Yeah.
So, but is there any particular thing that she seemed the most passionate about in high school or junior high school, if you remember? Like, it seemed like that she, or was it just?
I can't say. I can't say. I mean, if there were 6 of us in here, we could maybe tease it out of each other,
Yeah.
but I can't say that I remember.
Yeah.
I can't say it. And it's interesting, having had no classes in common for whatever reason,
Right.
and living in a different part of town.
Yeah.
So it's sort of intriguing that we were as good of friends as we were, which we were, because those were big barriers, at least
Sure.
in those days. But because we knew each other from early years,
Yeah.
is one of the reasons that we were good friends and part of a group of 10 or 12 young ladies that did a lot together. She was in high school. If you'd asked me as a high school student, for some reason you'd interviewed me about 10 people, I would have said she's different and a step ahead of all of us, if you'd asked me then. And I knew she was smarter than anybody. which she was. Those two things I knew. And I was not as much a frivolous kid. I mean, I was pretty serious too. So we were attracted to each other because of those are the kind of people that we were. Not that we didn't have fun, not that we didn't go to sleepovers, and not that we didn't, dance in the boobies parking lot, but but we were sort of on that end of the spectrum.
So you say that she's different. Do you think the combination of her compassion and her leadership and her serious makes her like obviously you would have seen this coming since like the day you met her, like how she's grown, like.
I think those are absolutely really important qualities, the whole compassion and leadership thing. I think in those days, we didn't even know what the word leadership meant. So I think that was, that's sort of interesting thinking about it now in today's leadership terms, but absolutely. She wants to make a difference. She always wanted to make a difference. And there are all kinds of leaders out there who, want to make a difference but don't have the staying power. She's huge staying power. And I'm a CEO, so I know what that's like. So, you got to just hang with it, what you believe in, and she's like that. She would follow her causes and her beliefs and her people to wherever she needed to go and take them wherever she needed to go with them. So it's a real passion that comes from completely inside who she is as a human.
And do you think that whole compassion thing came not only just from the church, but also the combination of her assertive and serious father, but her compassionate mother? Like she's gotten like the best qualities out of them,
Yeah.
and like combined them into like becoming her own person, kind of similar but different from her family.
I think that's a great way of putting it. I'm not sure even I had thought of it before, but when you consider who her father was, and as a business leader and an entrepreneur, and who her mother was as a very compassionate, other-oriented, cause-oriented person. And you add the fact that she was firstborn in a household in post-World War II where our families were so into giving us the best of classes, of schools, of parks, of whatever, and building a new America. She was, right in the middle of all of that. So when you think about it, the intersection is probably absolutely perfect. You're absolutely right about that, and it is. It's one of the stories about Park Ridge, and a lot of us in those days. We were very lucky to be living in those times where our parents didn't want the past to happen again. So I think you're right about all those qualities about Hillary you just named. It was sort of the perfect storm, if you will, to really make her into a leader. And then I think obviously her East Coast experience with, those were during the days of all kinds of protesting and demonstrations and whatever, and during those were days when people were taking sides, political sides in our college years, and making statements and making things happen in a very strong way. So that sort of continued that, and then when she became a lawyer, it sort of got tempered and turned into sort of a non-college story, but into the real world story. Mm-hmm. Nobody could have been better to be a lawyer and a politician than Hillary Clinton.
In high school, did you believe she would go down that path, or what did
No.
you?
I knew she was different, and just like I said, the fact that Hillary went East Coast to college was just beyond my imagination, because I was picking from which of the Big Ten schools I wanted to go to, besides not wanting to go to Illinois because that's where everyone else was going. But other than that, that was my reason for going to where I went. For Hillary Clinton, I think the East Coast, she knew that was a great place to get education. She knew that it was different there. She knew that people were more government-oriented, I think. And then she's a perfect lawyer. The fact that she became a lawyer, there aren't very many female lawyers in my age during that time. It was just perfect. And then her work with children early on and in Little Rock, it just all fits together when you think about it. It shows you that you really get a lot of your roots from your early years, which is where you all are. You do get an awful lot comes from this time when you look back and think about it. It doesn't seem like it at the time, but yes, I believe that it was part of the making of Hillary.
I read that you were one of the panelists for the 2014 Clinton Global Initiative, and
Oh.
that you guys tackled the issues of like women in the workforce. Could you just tell us a little about your role in that and what it was all about?
That's a very interesting question. So I was honored to be one of the panelists at the Clinton Global Initiative on women and women in the workplace and helping us to get to what we're calling these days parity for women in business. She actually came to hear me, which was great. so I remember thinking I didn't know I'd see her or not, and I was up here on this, I think they was on a stool up in front, talking about women's things, which I'm very into. And in walked Hillary, and she sat right down there in the front row, waved. It was just so different to have her listening to me instead of me listening to her. So I was really happy to be able to be a part of the Clinton Global Initiative, and it's great seeing a lot of things that I really care about sort of coming together, and all the work that they have done over the last 10 years is astonishing. I've been several times to the event, but that was the most outstanding one because I was a panelist and she was watching me.
Okay.
I've got about 4 minutes, so now's your chance. Then I have to jump in a taxi and go down to my 10-year-old granddaughter's violin recital in downtown Chicago.
Just, I don't want to make, but interesting your experience and you being a CEO, you know, and that's as a woman, and then Hillary's. I don't know if you could talk about that, like the expectations coming out of high school in 1965. Like, what were kind of the expectations of you? But you guys did blaze a different trail, both of you.
That's true.
And I don't know if
Yeah.
you could just talk about that.
It's an interesting question because one of the differences between Hillary and me is that she knows exactly what she wants and she's going there.
Okay.
And sometimes it takes me a while to figure it out before then I go there. And so I think I was much more raised in sort of a traditional family where the idea was to go to college and meet a husband and get married, and that was sort of the expectation. And I think then when I went to school and majored in liberal arts and got interested in a lot of things I didn't know much about was when I started being interested in teaching and education, and came out into high school teaching. So I was a high school teacher for 8 years. Then I went back to art school, and I was an interior designer and owned my own interior design firm for 12 years. Then I went and got my MBA at Kellogg, and that's when I became interested in business. So it took me a lot longer to get there.
Right.
Like it took me about 20 years and 2 marriages to get there. So,
Sure.
but now that I'm there, I'm really into it.
Okay.
So today I am very active in a lot of women's organizations, trying to help women business leaders in particular do better, be better, rise to the top faster. And I started a women's organization called AWESOME, Achieving Women's Excellence in Supply Chain, Operations, Management, and Education, 4 years ago. And we now have 750 senior women in supply chain, broadly based, that we are now working on symposiums, and we give speeches, and we are trying to figure out how we can do a better job of mentoring younger ladies in the whole field. But the field of supply chain management is where I ended up in business, and I'm very much a business person. And when I look back on me, it was built then, but I didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
So Hillary got a head start on me. 25 years, she went right there into her serious career.
Well, thank you very much, Anne. We want to make sure you get to your recital.
Okay, yeah, don't want to miss the 10-year-old.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. You girls were very well prepared and very nice to be with.